Good morning and welcome. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Mr. Lee Aase. He is Director of the Mayo Clinic Center for Social Media, which builds on Mayo Clinic's leadership among healthcare providers in adopting social media tools. By night, Lee is Chancellor of Social Media University Global, I like the acronym, a free online higher education institution that provides practical hands-on training in social media for lifelong learners. In 2013, he was inducted into the Healthcare Internet Hall of Fame. Prior to joining Mayo Clinic in 2000, Lee spent more than a decade in political and government communications. Welcome, Mr. Aase.
Thank you. I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit of the background on where SMUG came from. I was going around doing various presentations, and one of them was to a group called the Association Forum of Chicagoland, which is kind of like the National Association of Associations. It's all these groups that have their headquarters in Chicago because it's a direct flight from everywhere. And they asked me to do a 20-minute Facebook 101 course for, at that time my blog was called Lines from Lee. It was just the blog, it was the Seinfeld blog, the blog about nothing, just whatever I wanted to write about. I just wanted to get the hands-on experience. But when people would ask me, so how can I learn about this stuff? I'd say, well, just go check out my blog. Everything you see there I'm doing at no cost. And so, I'm paying nothing for my blog. So go there and you'd be able to learn. Well, I was doing the Facebook 101 course, 20 minutes, and I got some in-depth questions. And people, I finally just joked and said, well, that's in the 201 class. Which got me to thinking I had an opportunity for personal rebranding. So instead of Lines from Lee, I renamed my blog as Social Media University Global, or SMUG. Named myself the Chancellor because when you have your own university, you can give yourself a great title. And just kind of had some fun with it. And so that's sort of my alter ego. Sometimes I'm the Director of the Center for Social Media, and sometimes I'm the Chancellor of SMUG. So this is one of those SMUG presentations. It's actually an abbreviated version of something that I did for an adult learning class with of IBM employees in Rochester. They also have a plant in Rochester, Minnesota. So it feels kind of weird for the medical social media guy to be teaching IBM people how to tweet. That feels weird. But it's been, this is the shortened version of this. Today, going back to the Sesame Street lingo, today's presentation is brought to you by the number 1.9 times 10 to the 10th, which is the number of dollars that Twitter was valued at in its initial public offering, $19 billion. So it's kind of astonishing when you think that they charged nobody to actually use the service. They do now charge advertising and everything, but to think that a free service can be worth $19 billion is kind of amazing. One of the concepts I developed through SMUG is what I call my social media pyramid, which is a variation on the USDA food guide pyramid. I know they've gone to a plate metaphor now, but I'm sticking with the pyramid. But this is, microblogging, Twitter, externally sort of at the base of the pyramid. So I'm sort of recommending 6 to 7 servings per day would be your recommended daily allowance. And then as you work your way up to the top, at the blog, this is also sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you reach blogging, you self-actualize. So we're going to be just at the base of the pyramid today. So our agenda today, we'll talk a bit about the origins of Twitter. Talk about the bad and the ugly first, and then some of the good. Actually, I probably won't get into the creating your account because I don't think we have time, and I think I have some online resources we can direct you to for that. Some practical ways to use Twitter, and then a little bit on Twitter chats. So Twitter's origins started in the Silicon Valley when this company had a lot of remote workers, and one of the things they wanted to be able to do was just update people on what are you doing now? What are you working on? Because they were working at all different times of day. If you're on a coding crash, you're going to go well into the night, and so they set up Twitter, so as TWTR as their abbreviation. Yeah, you can read that on Wikipedia. A little bit about the bad and the ugly. So here are some examples of bad ways that people have used Twitter or how they got into trouble. So, if you know anything about publicly reporting, publicly traded companies, giving insider information out is not a good thing. So this is the old CFO, or Chief Financial Officer. Board meeting, good numbers equals happy board. Well, the good thing is it wasn't completely insider information because he put it on Twitter, so it was everywhere. Here's another one on crowdsourcing. McDonald's put out they said, let's have everybody do their McD stories about their experiences at McDonald's. So you just have to be prepared that when you put out something like that, you might get contributions that aren't necessarily what you were expecting. The parallels of having multiple accounts. This was somebody who was working for a PR agency that worked for Chrysler, and instead of putting it on his own account, he put it on the Chrysler Autos account. And I think you know what that word under the black box is. So that can be bad. This is what happened afterwards, after this guy was fired, and they renewed the contract. So here we go. Some more fun. KitchenAid, you may have remembered during one of President Obama's speeches, somebody who was managing the KitchenAid account talked about how, Obama's grandma knew that it was going to be bad, so she died before he became president. So it's happened on both sides of the aisle. This is from Microsoft to former Robert Reich. Comparing to Ann Coulter, really fun stuff. This is something really bad to do. Okay, when there's a tragedy happening somewhere in the world, this was Kenneth Cole tweeted about, when they're rioting in the streets in Cairo, it's because they heard a new spring collection is available. And so some other snarky people talked about how people dying in the streets, you want to advertise your fashions, and they came up with some other fun ones like, so they came up with somebody created a fake account called Kenneth Cole PR. One thing the Sudan Liberation Army and the Justice Equality Movement can agree on are hot new looks. They're fabulous. And hashtag Kenneth Cole tweets, so there were a ton of really savaging tweets that were out there. Here's another one. And then so they eventually did issue an apology. But so this wasn't like the company. This was actually Kenneth Cole, the guy who was the designer, who, as you can tell by my fashion sense, I know nothing about at all. Anyway, but I didn't know that such a guy existed. But this is the real Kenneth Cole. Here's another one. What's scarier, Hurricane Sandy or a beverage with marshmallow eyeballs? Again, so part of the reason, why would people do this? Okay, why would people use a hashtag like Cairo or Sandy? Why would, this is not a rhetorical question.
Questions together and responses in communities.
Right, so what they're doing in this case, so when you're going to learn about hashtags a little bit, what a hashtag, and I keep doing it like this because of the Justin Timberlake thing about hashtag. When people use a hashtag, there are 500 million tweets every day, okay? And what shows up when you use Twitter is that the people that you're following coming to your news feed, or sometimes people search based on the hashtag in front of a word, and when you see it hyperlinked like that, that makes it possible for people who aren't following each other but are discussing the same topic to see each other's tweets. So what they're doing in this case with President's Choice, or what Kenneth Cole was doing, is they're saying there's a natural disaster out there, or there's a riot, or there's some big issue, and lots of people are following. This is a trending topic, and so if I do a tweet that has that hashtag in it, more people are going to see my stuff, and I'm going to sell more shoes, or I'm going to, sell a beverage with marshmallow eyeballs. That's spamming. It's spamming just as much as it would be if you're sending emails to people who aren't looking for it. So, and then here's another one about when there was a not guilty verdict in a trial, and then Aurora is trending clearly about her Kim K-inspired Aurora dress. So this is after the Aurora, shootings in the movie theater. Don't do that. Okay, enough of that. So here's a tweet from. Spelling is hard for me. I hate this job. Hope they find someone soon. Robert is picky. We presented with 50 people. He's not happy. Not really understanding that Robert was actually would be following this. Here's another one, brand new Cisco employee on Twitter known as couldn't contain his honesty. Cisco just offered me a job. Now I have to weigh the utility of a fatty paycheck against the daily commute to San Jose and hating the work. So then Tim, who was there, says, who's the hiring manager? I'm sure they'd love to know you'll hate the work. The job offer was rescinded and he didn't have to make that hard decision about weighing the utility of the paycheck against the commute. This is one you may have heard about. Justine worked for a PR firm. Like, it just shows that people can get a job with a PR firm without a whole lot of PR sense. But she tweeted this as she was getting on the plane, and when she landed in South Africa, the world had blown up. I mean, this had blown up all of the. She was fired. I mean, the message she got when she was able to turn her Wi-Fi back on was that she was fired. And then this is Gilbert. So this is the voice of the Aflac duck, Gilbert Gottfried. Talked about how this was after the tsunami. Anyway, fun stuff. And then here's some mischief making. This kind of falls in with Kenneth Cole tweets. This is after the BP oil spill. Somebody set up a fake account talking about called BP Global PR, and they actually had more followers than British Petroleum had on their real account. So Ocean looked just a bit slender today, dressing in black really did the trick. BP cares hashtag. So this was a case. Then there's some genuine hacking. Burger King got hacked not by McDonald's really, but by somebody impersonating McDonald's. And so on the Burger King handle, they had McDonald's backdrop, and it was that was really fun. So, and then there's just some genuine cluelessness that can happen. This is Ashton Kutcher. Apparently had been living under a rock and hadn't heard about what was happening at Penn State, and talked about how do you fire Joe Pa? Hashtag insult, hashtag no class. I find it in poor taste. And anyway, he eventually got off Twitter for a while. Another problem that people are going to have, there are services that let you schedule tweets in the future, and sometimes you may schedule a tweet and something happens in between that makes your tweet look in poor taste. So here was there had been revelations that Tesco had been selling burgers containing horse meat. And they tweeted, "It's sleepy time, so we're off to hit the hay." So, not really funny when you make the horse jokes. So this is an example of. So I talked in the earlier presentation about there's the A and the ring around it, like Brian Gumbel was talking about. When you put @ in front of a username, that's mentioning someone on Twitter. If you put D space username, that's a direct message one-to-one, where it's only you and that other person. So this is a case of Charlie Sheen wanting to send a direct message to Justin Bieber with his phone number, sent it to the world, and so he published his phone number to the world. And then, of course, there's this guy. Anybody have heard of him? Okay, so just to a little walk down memory lane, former congressman took a compromising picture of himself and meant to send it as a direct message to a young lady in the Pacific Northwest, and instead used the @ mention. And then, of course, this was his tweet after that TiVo shot. Facebook hacked. Is my blender going to attack me next? Hashtag the toaster is very loyal. Was trying to say, yeah, my account was hacked. Of course, that turned out not to be the case. So what's really, this is the speed with which these things can happen. His initial tweet was on May 27, 2011. 4 days later, he claimed, my account was hacked. And it was just 15 days after that he ended up resigning from Congress. So what we talked about, how these social tools don't create bad behavior. They just broadcast it and make the consequences stronger. Because you may remember about Brett Favre, former Green Bay Packer. I'll talk about him as a Green Bay Packer quarterback, not a Minnesota Vikings quarterback in this case. But there actually, back when he played for the New York Jets, he was alleged to have actually this came out much later, sexted a sideline TV reporter. Well, if he would have done that on Twitter, the fact that he did it on a cell phone where it was just the one-to-one thing, yeah, it eventually came out. But if he had done it on Twitter, we maybe would have been spared of having him as our quarterback. So then this was the other fun thing, is that when he was running for mayor, Representative Wiener was caught sexting again. So the real risk of the bad and the ugly. There are 400 million tweets, actually more like 500 million tweets sent today. There are 500 million users on Twitter. We've discussed 19 bad examples in this case. So assuming there are 1,000 times as many actual bad cases, it's like 99.996% of people have a good experience with this. I mean, if you avoid the really egregious, stupid things, you can accomplish some really good things. So these are the categories of the bad and the ugly. Mistakenly tweeting from the wrong account, the public tweet when a direct message was intended, backfiring campaigns, setting up some, there were some, I think the Washington Redskins had a similar experience with this when they were attempting to crowdsource stories, the joking about serious matters, the spamming, not being aware of news developments like Ashton Kutcher. There can be real hacking, that's relatively infrequent though, and then just adding deception to any of the above. So that was actually Representative Wiener's biggest problem, was that he lied about it. He said, "Oh, my account was hacked." And when you when you compound with a cover-up from what the original thing, you're even worse. So the major life lesson is to pause before posting. There's a thing that you do in the OR that you pause, you go through the checklist before you make the incision, you make sure that you're operating on the right body part. Same sort of principle in mind here, that just to pause and think before posting, make sure that you're not making a mistake. And also that social media raised the cost of bad behavior. So now I'll talk a few of the good things here. So I'm sorry that I don't have my Wi-Fi to be able to bring this up, but Phil Jackson, the former coach of the Chicago Bulls and then the Los Angeles Lakers, started his Twitter account, and this was his very first tweet. And it's like, and it just became this phenomenon. It's like, what is this? What is this really all about? Okay, and like, what doesn't he know how to do this? And so, if I had the Wi-Fi to be able to show you, I could click through to show you this video, and it shows him at the keyboard, and he's expressing frustration. He says, "Am I supposed to take these off?" And he has his championship rings on, which is what's keeping him from being able to type correctly. So it was huge marketing genius for selling his book. He was writing a book about his championship. So another personal example that I had was, so this was back in, I think, 2008. I had just gotten on Twitter, and I put out a search. I set up a search function to let me know anytime anybody mentioned Mayo Clinic, because I thought, and it wasn't happening very often, back then. But I saw this tweet on a Sunday night from this guy named Tom Vanderwell, and when I saw that, I didn't know exactly what to make of it. It wasn't like it was a raving positive kind of thing. So I tweeted him back. I said, "Well, I hope that's about the illness that got you to Mayo Clinic and not the service you got." So this is his side of the rest of the conversation. It turns out, he says, "Oh no, absolutely, I had a wonderful experience there." And I clicked on his profile. I found out that he lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is where my daughter lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was going there that next week and actually presenting at a conference. It turns out that his office was right across the street from where the conference I was going to, and so I had not heard of this guy. He hadn't heard of me. We had no connection at all on Sunday afternoon, and Wednesday morning we were having coffee together in his hometown. And that's just the kind of connection that you just wouldn't happen, otherwise. And you might say, well, that's just kind of a nice, heartwarming thing, but really doesn't make any difference. Well, a few months later, I went there for my granddaughter's birthday, and I tweeted him in advance, and I asked him, I don't know if I've got this on here. Yeah. So I asked him, hey, would you want to tell your story about being at Mayo Clinic on our YouTube channel and on our Sharing Mayo Clinic blog? And he agreed to do it. I actually used his flip video camera to shoot video of him while we were there, and we put this on our story. And his story was just cool because he talked about how he'd had an arteriovenous malformation. He was there on it was over Super Bowl weekend, so he had his diagnosis, or he had his checkup on Thursday, Friday, and was having to stay till Monday for the procedure. He was in the hotel, and the people in the hotel, the owners of the hotel, said, nobody wants to spend Super Bowl Sunday in their own hotel room watching the Super Bowl, so they got a big screen TV and ordered pizza for everybody. And so this was part of his story about just how the community in Rochester is so welcoming. And it's the kind of story that never would have been told in the way we were able to tell it without being able to make these serendipitous kind of connections on Twitter. Dale Earnhardt Jr., I'm not a big racing fan or anything, but not that I'm against it. But he had this story talks about how right after, he had 230,000 Twitter followers without ever having posted a tweet. So that kind of tells you about the fanaticism of race car folks, of the NASCAR gang. But he got his Daytona 500 win, and he more than doubled his followers. And in that week after that, he was able to, he tweeted 127 times. He was just talking about how cool it was to be able to make these connections with his fans. It's really, really fun. I don't know, I was thinking why I didn't get on there earlier. Great way to tell people things and to share with them. Dell is using Twitter as a way of publicizing, or has used it as a way of publicizing refurbished deals on computers, so they're actually able to show ROI through their Dell Outlet hashtag. Here's an example of, the personal example that I had with this. I saw there's a guy named Ed Bennett who lives, I found out that he lives in Baltimore. We were following each other on Twitter, and I saw him mentioning something about a conference that he was going to, and if anybody needed a ride from Baltimore to DC, let him know. And so I tweeted, I said, are you based in Baltimore? He said, yeah, I'm at Baltimore at the University of Maryland Medical Center campus. I was going to be there on Tuesday for a conference. He says, wow, that's crazy. That's right across the street, kind of like the Tom Vanderwell story. So we ended up having lunch together, having dinner together. I told him I'm flying out at 6:45. I think my panel's on about 2:30, and he offered me then a lift to the airport. So thereby saving me about a $25 cab fare. So if anyone tells you that there's no ROI on social media, I can prove it right there, that just being on Twitter saved me $25. Another great story involved, just before I had gone out for that meeting, I'd met with a reporter from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. She was interested in seeing how they could apply Twitter. So this is, again, back like 2008, 2009. She sent me a direct, that's not working well. She sent me a direct message on, this is just unplugging. Okay, cool, we're set. Anyway, sent me a direct message on Twitter. Because of that, I was able to respond. I actually got it on Good Friday, and we arranged for an opportunity for her to be able to come tell a story. So, again, using Twitter for interaction with journalists and what my old job used to be. I think one of the really interesting things where it really shows you that the social, and Twitter in particular, has made inroads is how many times do you see an ad that doesn't have a hashtag or doesn't have a Twitter handle in it? What advertisers who are spending, I don't know how much they're going to spend on a Super Bowl ad this week. But, maybe it's a couple $1 million for a 30-second ad, and every one of them is going to have a social connection. That's just the way it's going to be. And it's because that's a way of giving further legs to the ads, but also really engaging the audiences instead of just talking at them. So it's that up for whatever thing. This is a colleague of mine, Brian. Well, I mentioned him earlier. He was the one that did the post about the Viagra-related problem. He's talked about how his PR staff at Texas Children's Hospital, how he had been approached by some of the national media to talk about the story with these buckyballs, these magnetic balls that are really cool, but the problem is that kids swallow them and then they cut off the blood supply and kids have to have their colons removed and stuff, and it's really bad. And his PR people were saying, well, how is it that you got this direct call from the journalists wanting to talk about this? It's because I'm on Twitter. Because they're discovering me on Twitter, and it really is a way that he's able to demonstrate his credibility, demonstrate his knowledge, and make connections again, even with the traditional media, and become that go-to resource. So, in the categories of the good, we've got listening, the ability to do qualitative research on a quantitative scale. So, people do focus groups where they put people behind a fake. Or it's not a fake thing; it's a real thing. It's a one-way mirror, and then you're watching how people are reacting in a fake situation. They're talking about a topic in a way that's really disconnected from reality. The fact that you can really understand people's sentiment about an issue on a quantitative scale by just listening through these tools. Again, establishing the thought leadership, connecting with others who have shared interests. One of the the hashtag is really the key to that, because, and you'll see that particularly in healthcare, there's a Twitter chat I encourage you to check out on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Central Time. It's called hashtag HCSM. It's Healthcare Communications and Social Media. It's a great chat where people, there are typically like 3 topics that they'll talk about a night. We're able to connect and discuss issues of common interest. Also then adding engagement to other communications. If you're doing marketing communications or other outbound communications, having a way for people to talk back to you, the building relationships, and then just the amazing serendipity that can come through. So I want to share just a few distinctives of Twitter and some additional lingo that you might find informative and helpful. Twitter is, as you compare Twitter to Facebook, Facebook, as I see it, is primarily for strengthening the relationships you already have. Ferris Tamimi, our medical director, talks about how Facebook is for all the girls who dumped him to find out that he has 2 kids. And so it's a way of, I love Facebook in the way that it enables you to be passively aware of the developments in the lives of people that I know but can't keep up with. Twitter's great for connecting with people who have common interests. So I like to say Facebook's for your friends, Twitter's for the friends you don't know yet. People like Ed Bennett, people like Tom Vanderwell, who would be my friends, with whom I have a lot in common, but I would not have met otherwise. There is a functionality in Twitter called protecting your tweets, where people have to ask for permission to follow you. Don't do that. If you're going to use Twitter, you're really defeating the purpose if you protect your tweets. The reason Facebook has the mutual friend thing is you've got all sorts of personal information about yourself. A tweet in your profile. On Twitter, your bio is 160 characters. Each message is 140 characters. It's not that personal listing like Facebook is. So it's really, in just about any case, it's really counterproductive on Twitter to protect your tweets. If it's something that you wouldn't want the world to see, don't put it on Twitter. I have something set up. Oh, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I have something set up on my phone for device notifications when any of my children tweet. Thankfully, they tweet much less frequently than they go on Facebook or other stuff. And my one son thought that was a little creepy, and Dad, why are you getting that? He said, well, you're telling the whole world this. I mean, this is published out for the whole world to see. And it's, it hasn't been, I haven't ever seen him do anything bad, but I'm interested in knowing what he's saying. So having that notification is kind of cool. So compared to a blog, a great way of thinking of Twitter is it's a microblogging platform. It's a multi-author blog where anybody can post, and it's limited to 140 characters. I really like using Twitter to take notes in a live event. So back in the old days, and by old days I mean like 2007, when I would go to a conference, I would live blog. And so I'd be taking notes, I'd be writing. So if I'm listening to Pat Masters, I'm writing through the whole thing. And then at the end, I'm hitting publish. And as a result, I'm missing a lot of what she's saying, because I'm trying to busy say, how would I rephrase this, or what is it, whereas with Twitter, you're doing it in real time. It's limited to 140 characters. I'm posting on what I hear, and then other people that think that's important are maybe retweeting it. More people are finding out about it right then. And meanwhile, if you use, like for this event, use the conference hashtag, you get to see what everybody else is saying. And then at the end, if you want to, you can go through and write a blog post that synthesizes all. You have all the notes from everybody, and you can have a more thoughtful reflection in the long form. So I say tweeting is a great way to take events and take notes. The blog is a good platform for review and synthesis. And then once you write the post, tweeting the link can help distribute it. So 5 reasons Twitter is better than email. The fact that there's no such thing as a long tweet is a pretty cool thing. You get to the point. There isn't. I have a lot of people come to me, or physicians, because they'll say, "I've got so much email already anyway. How can I have one other thing? How can I have one new thing?" Well, the thing with Twitter is that there isn't an expectation that you're going to. You don't get an inbox in Twitter that fills up. Okay? It's a stream just going by. And you may discover, now people might mention you, they might send you a direct message, and then there is an expectation that you would respond and engage. But the other part is that if I'm looking for information, if I send an email to, say, everybody in this room, if nobody in this room knows the answer, I'm out of luck, and I just sent you an unproductive email that's a waste for you too. But if I post the question out on Twitter, it's pretty sure that somebody out there is going to know, and I'm going to get the answer a lot faster. And that's what I mean about the open and discoverable. And I actually do mean that in the legal sense too. So they would be discoverable in the legal sense. But the main point is that you don't have to know who to ask. You just know what to ask. And sometimes you might want to throw on the appropriate hashtag so that it'll show up in the appropriate kind of feeds. The other part, the direct messages, can reach recipients with priority and with privacy. So as long as you don't do the Anthony Weiner mistake, you can send I can send a direct message to Holly, okay? Because we're following each other on Twitter. I can send Holly a direct message. If she sends me a direct message, it's going to buzz on my phone, okay? I don't have my phone buzz for every email because it would be buzzing all the time, but it's sort of like a pseudo pager almost. And so whether it's a notification that somebody's mentioned you or a notification that somebody sent you a direct message, it enables you to make those quick connections. And as I mentioned with the Minneapolis Star Tribune article, the fact that I got a direct message, it alerted me, the direct message on Twitter, it alerted me, and there was the opportunity to do the story the next week. The other thing is that if somebody is hassling you, or hassling may be too strong, but they're overdoing the direct message thing. If you unfollow them, then they can't send you a direct message anymore. So it really lets you take control over the conversations. So some people ask, what can you say in 140 characters? Have you seen how people text? The abbreviations that you use in texting are appropriate here too. But the real power is with URL shorteners and how you can paste it, whether it's Bitly or, and now more of them are being built into Twitter and other applications. Lets you take a URL that may be 100 characters and shrink it down to 20 or 25 so that you have more. So this is when we did one of our tweet camps. This longer one becomes this, and this just maps to the longer version and lets us have more content in the tweet itself, explanatory content describing it. So this is the bit about hashtags. I like to call it a prospecting tool in the gold mine of Twitter. So it lets you find those relevant nuggets. And whether it's an event like this one or a topic of interest, a health topic. The other fun thing is that there's no national board of Twitter hashtags. There's no registry, no official registry that would prevent you from using any hashtag. You don't have to have permission from anyone. But one thing I would suggest with this, though, is that you do, if you're interested in using a hashtag, and particularly if you want to set it up around a meeting or for some ongoing purpose, just search for it first and see if it's being used by anybody else, because on the one hand, you don't want to be horning in on somebody else's conversation. The second, you use hashtag cancer. I did it again. Use hashtag cancer. What would you think you'd find there? You'd think you'd find malignancy, but instead you would find astrology. Mostly astrology. It's all so that's why it's breast cancer or colon cancer or other, so you want to search on that stuff first. So to find tweets, search for the terms that interest you on Twitter. See people who are saying interesting things. Follow them. Twitter also makes recommendations based on people who you're already following. If you're following somebody, who are the people that they're following, and then also just start tweeting so that others can find you. Even if you follow somebody, they may have it set up that they get a notification when they get a new follower, and then they'll click on your profile. So you want to have your profile filled out so that you are representing yourself as not an egg-shaped person, like the newbies, but also that you've tweeted some interesting things, so that they'll say, oh wow, if I follow this person, the content that I'm going to be seeing is going to be useful. Now, Brian Bardabedian, the doctor that I mentioned earlier on the 33 Charts blog, I think he said he follows about 30 people. Okay? Where, I follow about more than 1,000, and it's to enable more of that one-to-one conversation. But it's a great way to identify some key thought leaders maybe that you want to follow, and then you can, it's a great way of digesting the news really quickly and being alerted to things that are going to be important to you. So that's a practical way. So this is on the building tweet cred. So Xuan Gui is the guy who came up with this term. I think it's great. It's street cred on Twitter is tweet cred. Consider following those who follow you, and so that enables that one-to-one. There will be all sorts of Russian women who may decide to start following you. I just want to let you know they're not real people. Okay, that happens. So don't follow them. Don't protect your updates. If people mention you, it's really, it's a nice thing to reply. If they direct message you, respond in kind. If they overdo it, you cannot follow it. But that just builds that community of interaction. When you are retweeting, now on Twitter, there's just the retweet button that you can hit. But what that does three really good things. First of all, it credits the original source, so that you're not just you could copy and paste somebody's tweet into a message, and hey, it's like plagiarism. But if you retweet it, what you're saying is, you're giving credit to the original person. You're actually helping your followers, because then they say, oh, that person says some interesting things too. I might want to follow her. And it helps your followers find the interesting tweeters. So then publicly thank those who help you, admit mistakes, and also don't conceal your work affiliation. We have that part of our social media guidelines for Mayo Clinic. And this is related to the Federal Trade Commission, that they don't want to have people shilling for products when they have a stake in it. So I say, mine says something like, tweets are mine, not Mayo's, but I disclose that I work for Mayo Clinic. So it's that, I'm speaking for myself, but I work for Mayo Clinic. So that's kind of what I was saying before in my disclosure about I work for Mayo Clinic. I'll say nice things about Mayo Clinic, take it under advisement. So a few other sites you might check out. Tweetchat.com is a great site for participating in a Twitter chat, because one way that you can become frustrated as a new Twitter user is when you're participating in a Twitter chat and nobody's responding to you. You say, why is it that? It's because you forgot to put the hashtag in, and nobody else there is seeing your contribution. So tweetchat.com is one of these places where you go in and log in with your Twitter account, and you say what room you want to go into, and if it's HCSM, you put that in, and then it'll put HCSM on the end of every one of your tweets, so that it gives you 135 tweets that, 135 character limit instead of 140. TweetDeck is a great platform for being able to sort into columns. So I used to have a real problem with Twitter because, just using the basic Twitter, because, when you do a search, because I kept doing these manual searches. But what TweetDeck lets you do is have columns. So you say, this is my mentions of me, this is my mentions of Mayo Clinic, this is my hashtag HCSM, so that they're automatically fed in there, and you can just scan them more quickly and see if there's something relevant to respond to. And then buffer.com TweetDeck has this capability as well, but buffer.com lets you schedule tweets. So if you want to spend 30 minutes a week on Twitter, and you could, in the 30 minutes, be scanning articles and tweeting those, scheduling those tweets to happen over the next few days. I know some people. I've got actually one of my physicians for whom I get text alerts. I'll get a text message, a text alert that says so-and-so has tweeted this. And I know sure as, I just haven't remembered to talk with him about it. I'll get 2 minutes later, I'll get another tweet from him, and 2 minutes later I'll get another tweet from him, and 2 minutes later there's another one. And then I won't hear anything, for the next, several days. And so I need to introduce him to Buffer. Thanks for reminding me. So this is, we do have some materials on SMUG for additional exploration, some of the basics, as well as some more advanced topics. But with that, I am open for any questions or discussions or great stories or paralyzing fears.
How do you handle negative tweets or negative videos? Someone wants to comment on their experience at Mayo and on the website or publishing that customer.
Yeah, so I'll just break up. So if they're on Facebook, if they put a comment on our Facebook page and they say something negative, our response is going to be, we're sorry to hear that. Here's our Office of Patient Affairs phone number. We'd appreciate it if you give them a call because they'd like to be able to, let's see, Office of Patient Affairs, like to be able to better understand your concerns, see if we can help. Okay. That does two things. It says, first of all, it's by responding in public in that way, you're signaling to the rest of the visitors that you are listening and that there is a mechanism and we're there to help. It also helps, it actually helps to have negative comments. Because if it's all positive comments, then people say, oh sure, they're just deleting all the negative ones. And so, it's a valuable opportunity for feedback, and maybe there's some service recovery opportunity. On Twitter, and the thing is on Facebook, it's a very public thing. It's your page, okay? When people tweet, they're saying it on their own Twitter account. Okay, so it isn't like it's going to show up on Mayo Clinic's Twitter page. I mean, we're searching and we're hearing it. We're still doing some of that same follow-up, but we might send them a direct message, or we might, reply, say, hey, DM us and we'll get you that information. We aren't in the business of wanting to amplify those. And if they've got 100 Twitter followers and we've got 1 million, if we I mean, we'd be calling more attention to it by, by responding to it too much. Fundamentally, we want to try to do the right thing and give people the help they need. And by doing that in a transparent way, it's good. Yes?
What percentage now that we have Yammer? I noticed you mentioned
Yes.
it here. Does that work pretty similarly to Twitter?
Yeah, Yammer is, I like to call it a cross between Facebook and Twitter for the enterprise. So Yammer used to be its own company, then got bought by Microsoft. And in our case, it's only, our version of Yammer is only open to people with a mayo.edu email address. So those people obviously then work at Mayo Clinic. They have to validate that email address to join. And so it's got the threaded conversations. It's probably morphed to become more like Facebook for the enterprise than Twitter, although it's got, there's sort of blending of that. We use it a lot around with work teams to be able to, like our Center for Social Media team has people in Arizona, Florida, as well as in Rochester. We used to do some daily check-in phone calls. Now we've moved those over to Twitter, to be able to keep people continuously updated on what's going on, and then it's a repository of the conversation. So the nice thing is that when you send an email like I've sent an email to my whole team, some people will reply just to me, some people will reply all, and you don't have the whole conversation together, whereas if we do it on Yammer, all the contributions are there. You can read the email, I'll get an email saying that somebody from our team posted on Yammer, but I can read it and delete it right away instead of having to say, should I be filing this someplace, because Yammer takes care of it. It's really good. Anything else?
How long are the tweets available in the
Well, the Library of Congress is now archiving all of them, so if you tweet something, it's at least theoretically always available there. In reality, the stream's going pretty fast. I mean that the half-life of the tweet is about 30 minutes, and it kind of varies by how many people you're following. I mean, I'm following, as I said, something over 1,000 people, so that another benefit of the tweet deck, and Twitter has this as well, you can create lists. So I can still have my influencers sort of list where I say, now these are people that I want to make sure don't go way down the stream so quickly. So being able to have separate columns for members of our advisory board, for instance, people that would be more likely to want to retweet or respond to. Thank you for your attention. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.